Hey.
Thank you.
I was going to say.
Thank you.
Okay.
Shall we?
That was cool how we all sat down together.
I know.
It's like cute.
Hi and welcome. I'm youre, and I wanted to thank you all for coming at the end of this amazing conference and being here. And again, thank Stanford for hosting this conference and my distinguished panelists who are out here with me. So I'm very excited. I was a little concerned when I got a call and was asked to host a panel on embracing failure, and I thought, what did I do to deserve this honor? But I know the stories that we have as entrepreneurs certainly include failure, and embracing failure is an important part of the entrepreneurial journey. So my background, I've been involved in the starting of a number of companies, some that you've heard of very well, like Visa and Sun Microsystems and Tesla Motors, but others that you haven't heard of that didn't go quite as well and therefore are not part of our lexicon. So I wanted to quickly introduce our panelists and ask some questions and set the stage, and then I would love for all of you, there'll be microphones available and we'll be moving to Q&A. So first of all, on my far left, Jacques Panis is the president of Shinola. Shinola is awesome. Is helping lead the way for Detroit's renaissance by building high-quality watches, bikes, leather goods, and journals. And before joining Shinola in 2010, he founded Webisaurs, an online brand created to educate children globally on the history and diversity of our planet.
Which was an epic failure, by the way.
Yes, he told me back, the epic fail. Next to him is Mike Shepard, who's a partner at Growth Point Technology Partners. Mike has a long and distinguished history as a 5-time entrepreneur, building, running, and advising technology companies. And today he focuses on advising companies in cloud computing, systems management, security, storage, networking, and mobile device management. Next one over is Dilawar Syed. He is president of North America for Freshdesk. Freshdesk is based in Chennai, India, and is a cloud-based customer service platform designed to help brands better interact with their customers, and vice versa. And he's truly an international entrepreneur. He has built and scaled businesses around the world. Next we have Damon John, our very own shark. Damon is also a presidential ambassador for global entrepreneurship. He is an entrepreneur in every sense of the word. He has come a long way since taking out a $100,000 mortgage on his mom's house and moving into her basement to start his operation. He's the founder of FUBU, a best-selling author, and a shark on ABC's top show, Shark Tank. Next off, Herb Engert is a partner at Ernst & Young's private equity practice and heads up the growth efforts for Ernst & Young across the Americas. He understands the challenges of private equity firms and their portfolios, and he supports his clients with acquisitions, financing, integration, risk management, and exit strategies. So all of these panelists have really amazing entrepreneurial experience, starting companies, starting businesses within larger companies, investing in entrepreneurs, coaching entrepreneurs, and I'm really excited for all of their insights. So let me first frame the discussion on what it means to embrace failure. Over the past several years, the media has really jumped on the topic of embracing failure as a big conversation around entrepreneurship, and we've certainly heard a lot of that in some of the talks today. It feels great to hear about others talk about their failures, but not so great to go through it ourselves. The path to success for most people has a number of twists and turns and looks more like a wave than a straight line. Here in the US, 50% of new businesses survive 5 years or more, and only a third survive 10 years or more. Also, according to the Small Business Administration in the US, 66% of small businesses, which by the way are most businesses in the US, will survive their first 2 years. And a recent Harvard study showed that 3 out of every 4 venture-backed companies fail, but only 30% of those are a total loss. Others just don't return their capital. So I would argue that failure is not really a great thing, but the lessons we learn from failure can be really important. So a culture that encourages us to learn from failures is really essential to entrepreneurship. And as policymakers, I would say that the policymakers in various countries need to ensure that there are policies in place that allow entrepreneurs to accept failure as a natural part of doing business in their country. So let me start off with a question for all the panelists. I would like each of you to tell us how you define failure and what failure means to you as part of starting or running a business. Jacques, you want to start it off over there?
Sure. I think failure is a subjective word, but for me, failure means success ahead, right? You have to fail to succeed, and without failure, success is probably not on the horizon. We at Shinola love to fail fast because we learn from failing, and once we open that door and there's a big hairy monster behind us that has failure tattooed across its chest, we shut the door and we move in the opposite direction. But I think one of the reasons that they brought me to this panel is because we went to a city that's called Detroit, that arguably was a failure. But I would say that Detroit is the greatest success story on the face of the earth today and is the most relevant city on the planet today. And is one that is a great example of failure on many levels, but will be an example of great success down the road. So for me, failure is the door to success.
Thanks, Mike.
This is Mike. I'd probably say very much the same. Learning from failure is critical, not being afraid of it. Failure to me is almost like a path to success, as he just said, where you got to be honest about seeing it when it happens, and then really think about it, listen to what happened, try and analyze it, and figure out how to move through it, and fail fast. It's really painful when you deny the failure and you're not honest about it, and you don't embrace it, and then you'll fail slow, and that's where it really hurts, because you'll miss the big goal that you set yourself.
My perspective is that you have to almost frame it differently. It's not a question about personal failure or even company failure. When you are a mission-driven organization and you're a mission-driven company, a lot is riding on you. It is about your people, about your team, about your family often, and it's often about your community, especially many of us who are here, many of you are here, from around the world. Those startups are coming out of these hubs that are not really known for startup. A lot is riding on you. So failure almost is not an option, and frankly doesn't even belong in my dictionary. I'm actually an immigrant. I came to this country 25 years ago, and you just have to go through these steps. And yes, there are some missteps. Yes, you recalibrate and you move forward, but you really don't have a choice, and you never look back. So you just pick yourself up and you move forward. So I think it's really about how we frame it. And for many of us who are mission-driven entrepreneurs and organizations, it is what we're doing is much bigger than for us individually. So it becomes a much broader way to respond when you have outcomes that are not exactly what you intended them to be. Otherwise, in some dictionary, might be a failure.
Yeah, I think we're going to hear echoing the same thing. Failure is not failure, it's part of the process. I consider, any failures I've had as things that I didn't study the small indications, which would basically be the affordable steps, and then I wasted a large amount of time and or resources, and then I failed big. But it's part of the process in anything that grows. Business is like your child, or it's like a marriage, right? I think that we don't really see, or a friendship, we don't really see the true colors of a unity of anything until there's challenges. And then how do we resolve those challenges? So, it's really part of the process. I close my company FUBU 3 times from '89 to 1992 because I just ran out of capital. But I only ran out of $1,000. That wasn't a failure. That was just part of the process because I went back into the company because I said, wow, I really love what I'm doing. But if I didn't close it, I would have never realized how much I loved it. So it's just part of the process.
You know, I'm actually the lone panelist who's not an entrepreneur, but I've failed many times, believe me. I actually, you know, I've been working with entrepreneurs my whole life. You know, at Ernst & Young, we run our Entrepreneur of the Year program. And so many entrepreneurs actually come to the stage, and it's always great to see the successes, but they all acknowledge the failures like we've seen over the last couple, or we've heard about over the last couple of days. And so, you know, I always view it as stepping stone. So I agree with the fail fast. You know, I think that's probably something we see in big companies too. When they think about their own innovation and incubation, they're always like, some of the largest companies are always, you know, they have either like 12-week, you know, kind of timelines or whatever, where they say we're going to incubate ideas and we're going to kill them or let them go, you know, if they can survive. But either way, I'm a big believer in the fail fast and a big believer in the stepping stone. So very similar to what everyone else is saying.
Damon, in your book, The Power of Broke, you talk about how powerful the brink of failure is for entrepreneurs. Why is it so powerful, and what should someone do when they're right on the edge?
Well, I think that the way I addressed the power of broke is not about to embrace the failures. It was about that money is not going to solve your problem necessarily. It's only going to give you a superficial feeling of security, and that you won't be able to fail fast unless, you know, you put that limitation on yourself. So if you have something that's inferior, you know, going out and taking out huge loans and hiring a fancy staff and doing everything else like that, you're just going to have, and taking a bunch of inventory, you're going to have a bunch of inferior inventory. And when you learn to tap into your relationship capital, or when you use OPM as other people's marketing or manpower or mind power or mentoring, you start to learn how to tap into what really is your brand and what do you have. If I would have had the money, I would have financed my company for 2-3 years. Those individuals would have stayed around as long as I was paying them. All right, I would have kept paying for everything. But when you don't have resources and you create a movement and people are around you every single day because they believe in what you're doing, you start to see and you start to work out what you have, what your objective is. So it's not about embracing failure. More in the book, the theory is you have to figure it out. And when you have money, you've already made your mistakes small. You've learned how to maximize that. The people around you know the true colors of them. You know if they're problem solvers or problem starters. All the ones that are around for false reasons, they jump ships like rats, right? And you get to learn if you really have something. And if you have to ask yourself too, if you really have a passion. A lot of people aren't honest with themselves. You know, some people are doing things purely because they want to be famous or they want money or some other thing. You just need to really be very honest with yourself on why you're actually doing it.
Thanks. Jacques, you helped drive Shinola's expansion, and you're expanding into more cities. How do you encourage risk-taking at Shinola, but also what happens if an idea doesn't pan out, either for a new location or a new product or a new process? How do you keep that balance now as you're expanding to keep that early entrepreneur's mindset?
Sure. You know, we empower people at Shinola. Whether it's Willie Holly, who was a security guard in the building when we started this business, who had never made a watch or built a watch movement, but came up and took the visual and aptitude test. And today, Willie leads a team of 42 people. And hopefully, we will see that this is something that will impact Willie's life and multiple lives in the city of Detroit. And what that implies is that we're enabling people to go out into the organization, make decisions, make choices, and fail. But hopefully they fail fast, and hopefully they learn, and they continue on the path to achieving success and achieving the goals that we set in place for our teams. It's fascinating to see when people do fail, heads are down. But we have this thing at Shinola we call the high five culture. And the high five culture is about picking people up. and patting people on the back and thanking people for what they're doing and the efforts that they're putting forth and everything that they do. None of us are perfect. All of us fail. All of us make mistakes. And it's going to be okay. And I think, just to echo a little bit what Damon was saying down there, we all run around as entrepreneurs wanting money. We want money. We want to raise capital. And you know what? It's not about the capital all the time. It's not about the money all the time at the end of the day. It's about your people, empowering your people, and looking deep within to find where the success is going to come from.
Thanks. Mike, you are an investment banker now, and you have to quickly understand a variety of businesses and think very strategically about how the business could grow and what the barriers are to growth. So how do you know if you're seeing a company that's veering along a path that you don't think is right, how do you know if it's a strategic failure and the company really is not going to be able to succeed and grow, or if it's just a bump along the road? How do you assess that?
I think depends on the strategy, obviously. A bump along the road is something that you can survive. A strategic failure is perhaps much more catastrophic. I'm just listening to these guys. I recall my old business partner, Ravi, and we started a company in his apartment. And one time I had to stay in his apartment because I couldn't afford to go back across the Golden Gate Bridge because I didn't have the toll money to come back again. And that's when we learned what the business model was and why we needed to make money. But if you really haven't thought through your strategy in terms of a business model, and you don't have a model that is going to make money, then it's very easy to keep going to a point whereby you can grow it to the point of failure. And a bump in the road is where you might see a competitive product, or you might see a business model that's different from yours, where you get price pressure, or a customer gives you, part of sales is you get 9 no's to get a yes. If you keep getting no's, and it's because there's just something fundamentally wrong with your product or your strategy or your business model, then you really need to think it through pretty quickly, because that's when you've got a failure with strategy as opposed to a bump in the road. Bumps in the roads are customers saying, no, your product doesn't work, and if only it could do this, or your message just isn't clear, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me, or you've got some people issues. Those are sort of bumps in the road. But a major strategy failure is market's too small, your price is wrong, your product is just going to get eaten up by somebody else, and you've got to figure that out quickly if you can.
Thanks. Herb, E&Y is famous for their Entrepreneur of the Year award, which I understand you run for the Americas.
Yep.
And you must receive a lot of nominations from really great entrepreneurs. I read recently that a number of private equity firms have been saying that they're much more excited about investing in entrepreneurs who've already had some catastrophic failures and have been able to pick themselves up and go at it again, or at least have, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, the secret to success is past failure. So do you think that an entrepreneur that has a lot of scars is going to be a better entrepreneur, and do you take that into account when you're doing the E&Y awards?
Yeah, I'll say actually, many of our entrepreneurs have had significant, businesses or serial entrepreneurs. Many of them have had failures, struggles. I will say the one thing that I absolutely love about our entrepreneurs is everybody that takes the stage, ultimately when they win, they really recognize that it's a team sport. And, so a lot of people have talked about that here, but I really appreciate that, because while it is the entrepreneur's passion and dream, it really is a team sport. But definitely in the private equity world, I think that, street cred, the history of the entrepreneur, where they've been, their failures, successes, they'll definitely look at that. I think that's really where you've been. And serial entrepreneurs are very good investments, as long as there's also positive EBITDA. So, you're really talking about private equity probably being at a much later stage in the value chain in terms of the financing options. But I do think that, the credibility and the history of the entrepreneur and where they've been. And, I'd have to say many private equity players, and these guys have probably dealt with many of them, they do look at entrepreneurs that they've either financed before or they've backed before, and that's probably more the norm than not. But absolutely. So
I'm going to
That
take.
was one of my first public acknowledgments, was the Ernst & Young Award, but I failed because I had the New York one. I went and I flew all the way to this fancy place and was going to take the nationals, and I got beat out by this little company named JetBlue Airways. These people are reuniting families and everything. I'm making T-shirts, but that was a failure.
no,
great.
we're very proud of Damon's.
But then he honored me later on. Thank you.
Damon's one of our EOI
Very
alumni.
Yeah,
kind
he
of
gave me
you.
the poor baby honoree about 10 years later.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to ask one more and then get your questions ready. There'll be mics passed around, so everybody get ready to ask some of your burning questions. Dilawer, you ran a social media company from Silicon Valley in Istanbul, Turkey, and are now scaling Fresh Desk from your headquarters here in Silicon Valley and in India, and you grew up in Lahore, Pakistan. How do these other cultures see failure, and what does it look like in other cultures? And more importantly, given there are very different cultural outlooks on failure, are entrepreneurs in other cultures at a disadvantage?
Great question. And it is true. I think it's a subjective term. We all said that. And I think it does not have a Western context or a North American context or a Valley context. It means different things to different people in different parts of the world. And I have had incredible circumstance or privilege to be in so many different places. What I would say is this, though. It is true that in South Asia, for example, or other parts of the world, where you don't have the startup ecosystem as developed, getting that first job out of your university is what families and men and women are looking for. And there is this fear that, oh my goodness, you know what, I'm not going to be employed, and I need to be able to earn income, often for myself, but also for my family, for my parents. That's the reality all across millions of households, if not billions of households across the world. So we cannot discount that. However, what I would say is, having lived in both parts of the world, that while the risk of taking a plunge is perhaps, I would say, on an order of magnitude higher, the opportunity to actually get stuff done, because often you're the first mover in some of these economies, in certain services and products. And if you look at the sheer scale, that is tremendous. The reward is also significant. So we know many folks, whether it's Alibaba and others, who have made tremendous strides. So it did take, frankly, a lot more gut, with all due respect, than it took with somebody here in the Valley. So, but I would say even within our own country, right in this country, there are communities that are held back. There are communities that don't have a level playing field. So there too, I was actually at the Detroit Story event last night, and I was hearing these wonderful stories about folks in Detroit who have gone through perhaps a similar experience as the developing world. So I think there is a difference in what you go through, but I do feel at the end of the day, that's what entrepreneurship is. You take that risk. I would finally just say this, that it doesn't mean that you don't calibrate, or rather you don't prepare yourself to be ready when you feel you're ready to make that plunge. In my particular case, I came into this country on a student visa with a 6-month, one single entry to attend college. I had to go through H-1B visa, and Ernst & Young was nice enough to sponsor me. Thank you, sir. And as much as I would have liked to do a startup, I could not, because I was shackled to the system. But I used that opportunity, those early 8 to 10 years before business school, to prepare myself. And I was entrepreneurial at the firm and beyond. And those skills have been tremendous today for me to be able to execute and help us scale. So I think we all make our calculations, but my sort of message to entrepreneurs around the world would be, I wouldn't hold myself back just because you're in an economy where you may think, oh my God, if I lose this job at this wonderful multinational, I don't have a future. You do have a future. In fact, your future is going to be brighter than your counterparts here, because often you are leading, for the first time in many of those sectors.
Thanks. I can turn to questions from the audience.
Boom.
Wonderful. Okay. Wait. Do we have one more? Oh, Mike, you're going to jump up and do
So,
okay.
hi.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah. So hi, I'm Catherine from Dominican Republic. So I want to know, is there something that you guys imagine that your credit cards are maxed out, you don't have any customers, so basically you don't have money to buy for food? Is there something you do or you say to yourself other than sitting on the bathroom and cry when you're failing? Because it's really hard.
I'll have a
So the
crack.
mental part.
So, entrepreneurs, we're positive, purposeful people that see the glass as half full. And it's almost no matter what hits us, we kind of find a way through it. But it's very easy to get emotionally negative, and that's a key thing to avoid. It's a philosophical question. I'd say it's very easy to have your self-esteem hurt, especially in other cultures, where failure might be a black mark. And so that way, if you're resilient, if your self-esteem is resilient, then you'll still be able to maintain the relationships with your community and your family. I think it was Steph from Solstice was saying that her parents split up because her dad was an entrepreneur, and she didn't want to be an entrepreneur because of that. And it was probably a combination of his self-esteem as well as his failure that affected the relationship that he had with his wife. I can't even guess what it was, but still. Those are three things. I can't remember who asked the question, but I think entrepreneurs, you kind of have to be half full, you have to be resilient, and you have to find a way, no matter what happens, to preserve your relationships in your community and your family.
Next one, thanks.
Great to have the mic. Okay. This is very nostalgic for me, especially to you, Damon. We actually met 3 years ago. You were at Yale University speaking, and I had come in from Zambia. Now it's not as impressive because everyone's from around the world here. And we spoke about work-life balance, especially with pressure. And you gave some great tips. And I left the US, went back to Zambia, continued working on my business, which is e-commerce. Grew to become the largest e-commerce company in Zambia. Thank you. Well, I'm not quite done yet.
Okay.
Yeah, in 2014, I actually took part in the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, was a runner-up there. I won a Harvard Business School business competition, and last year we raised $500,000 from venture capital, which people said could not be done in a market like Zambia.
That's great.
But that has come with a whole slew of pressure and bumps that you've got to deal with. And my mother's on me now because I'm still not married, and she's got no grandkids in the horizon. And a lot of it is
Don't get married now. Don't get married now.
So really,
What'd you say? Don't get married.
Don't get married right now.
so really,
How many of the successful entrepreneurs here are on your second marriage? Raise your hands.
We have to do the counter now. How many of the successful entrepreneurs here are happily married?
On your first marriage. It's about even. Stop clapping because you're sitting next to your wife.
There is hope.
Go ahead.
but that is really exactly my question then and my question back then. How do you deal with the pressure and keeping balance and keeping your head up really in the face of
Probably the hardest question that I've never been able to answer. I've been asked that many times. Business is it's a full-time job. It's a dedication, and you'll hear or see somebody like a Mark Zuckerberg up there he still hears no, right? Think about that. He still hears no. You will never hear a bunch of yeses, no matter what, because every single person on this panel is still being doubted, right? Because that's what people do. And a true entrepreneur has a healthy paranoia that it's going to be over tomorrow. I need to diversify. What's the next step? Technology is changing so fast. Wait a minute, I need to have a kid. Wait a minute, what about my health? Holy crap, how am I changing the world now? Because I'll go to places like Zambia and I'll see people that have challenging access to clean water, access to light, and I'm over here complaining that I can't get a new television, right? So you'll always have that challenge of time, and that's a very big challenge. And I think that a lot of times we don't want to actually set a goal and set time aside and put it in the calendar as allocated time. But my mother told me about it like when we were poor. She used to always say, don't pay any of the bills until a cutoff notice comes, right? Put $10 in the bank, put $10 in the bank, and when it means cutoff notice, that means we're dead serious this time. And I think that you need to put that dollar in the bank when it comes to time. And I'm suffering from it right now, I'll be very honest. Shark Tank has been such an amazing journey for me that I never expected that I would be a little brown boy from Queens. Now I'm sitting next to the President of the United States and sitting next to amazing entrepreneurs. So I can't sit there and say, well, that's going to be around forever, right? We know a hot show is going to be around for 5 years, 8 years, 10 years. Shark Tank has been breaking all the rules, so I have to dedicate myself to that. I have to dedicate myself to those amazing people that allow me to invest in their dreams as well, because I will let them down if I don't. But I have to have social causes, and I have a 22-year-old, an 18-year-old, and now a 4-month-old. Yeah.
Whoa.
No, not clapping. It's fine, thank you, but it's like, whoa, right? And then at the age of 47, you know, many of us up here have seen people that we thought would live forever dead at 30 and 35 and 40 because of cancer and not taking care of themselves. I always fight with the theory of time, but it's the most important thing you have to pay attention to right now. Put aside those couple of, you know, whether it's I'm going to spend, you know, 2 hours a day, you know, eating right and exercising, or I'm going to spend that time with my daughters or my mother, my father, my loved ones. You just have to put it aside, but I don't have an answer. And if anybody else has an answer up here, please give me the answer.
Anybody else want to?
So I'd like to jump in very
please.
quickly, just on this point. I agree with Damon completely. I would say number one, you know, as you scale up, you got to start trusting your team and delegate. You have to let go, and letting go often is not easy for highly driven entrepreneurs, you know, but you got to let go. And we have this culture at Fresh Test where we literally empower people, and that's the only way for you to scale. Secondly, I actually genuinely believe that every entrepreneur must have other passions along with, in addition to their work. So I'm very active in the civic tracks. There's a time when I'm thinking about empowering Asian Americans to vote. And when I'm thinking about that problem, I'm disconnected from everything. So when I go back, I feel I'm more creative. You know, I don't think it's healthy for you to be 24/7 doing the same thing. And finally, thirdly, family comes first. I have a daughter in high school. I have a son who's in 7th grade, rising. And those people come first. So I think you have to be organized. You have to divide your time, but you got to have a team that can enable you and have other passion and interests that draw you in enough that, you know what, you say, I can step back. And let me tell you, world will not fall apart. It's a team. It's a village that's working with you. So I think sometimes we probably take ourselves way too seriously. And it's important to step back and you know, let the system help you out as well.
For me, you know, it's like people always talk to you about this work-life balance. There ain't no balance. You know, it's work and life, and it's all one thing, right? And your mama's going to get that grandbaby one day, I suspect, right? That's going to happen, and it'll happen with time, and time will allow you to succeed, will allow you to have a healthy baby, will allow you to have a healthy company. But trying to figure out the work-life balance, if you do that, you can be the next New York Times bestseller and go write a book, because you will have figured out the Da Vinci Code, in my opinion. Work-life balance.
I think the same thing. I think fixating on trying to find balance is like trying to get your to-do list that's going to be done. It never is. And so I think the whole concept of balance, one of the things that really helped me psychologically was going for multiples. So instead of doing one thing, trying to get a twofer or a threefer. So if I have somebody who wants to meet with me, if I can meet with them while exercising on a walk and maybe bringing along kids or another entrepreneur that might like to get mentored, I can do 3 things at once and exercise at the same time. So that I'm always thinking about, are there multiple things and other folks I can involve to make this time multiply? So.
My question is a little bit towards the international scope. I work in Vanuatu. It's a small island nation in the South Pacific. And so the idea of maintaining morale and explaining failure in a culture that really might not even understand the ideas behind entrepreneurship in the first place, and you're kind of bringing them along with you on that journey. So how do you maintain that sense of, you know, yes, we failed this time, but we're going to use this failure to succeed the next time, and we're going to build upon this when all of these are new ideas. And you know, these people are coming from very simple beginnings, and if failure might mean not eating or not having housing that they need and things like that. So how do you maintain that?
Jacques, the city of Detroit certainly went through some of that,
Sure.
trying to pull
I mean,
itself
we've
back
brought
up.
in a workforce into a facility where the city, these people have been surrounded by failure and know only failure, and that starts from the family, which means the home, to the school system, to the city, to their environment. Detroit's 138 square miles. It's a gigantic city that you can fit several large metropolitan cities here in the United States inside of Detroit. So you can imagine a kid walks out of his or her home and sees nothing but failure, right? And so at Shinola, when we bring these people into the factory and we give them an opportunity to succeed, but then that machine that they're trying to succeed on fails, you can imagine they think, oh shit, I've failed again, right? But that's where we come through with the high five. And we come through with the, it's going to be all right. This is a machine that's failed. Or maybe they have failed, right? But it's okay to fail. It's going to be all right. We're going to get you back on path. You're going to get back to sewing or cutting or assembling, whatever your task is, and we're going to hit those numbers, and we're going to make you successful. I think it starts at the top, right? It starts with you. What are you doing? What is your message to your people? How are you communicating to your people? Are you positive? If you're positive, everybody behind you is going to be positive. And that's how we operate, and we try to exude that out into the community of Detroit. We've created 550 or so jobs. About 350 of those are in Detroit, and 240 of them are in manufacturing. I don't know, I'm sure all these guys and gals on this panel and many of you out there have seen manufacturing operations around the world. Heads are down, morale is down, pay is low, and the work environment oftentimes is pretty crummy. At Shinola, we have music in the factory, which I would argue you don't see in many factories anywhere in the world. We have smiles on the faces, and we have people coming through nonstop seeing what we're doing. And those people are the ones that are motivating the folks that are working on these lines and working within the organization. It's an energy, and you create that energy.
Could I just add one thing to that too? On the, I think we talked about entrepreneurship being a team sport, and I think the biggest single thing that I think you can do as a leader and to promote your team is to be vulnerable. I think that's really the key to teaming is vulnerability and letting your guard down and really being honest and open with each other. So I think that's what we've learned here, right? Is people being vulnerable and sharing their mistakes, right? It's all about resiliency. But I think actually somebody that's open and honest, and that's what I've always found has been the most fulfilling exercise for a leader, to be vulnerable. And if you fail, you're failing as a team. And then I see many entrepreneurs actually pick up that same team and they go at the next venture. But always be vulnerable and allow somebody into the feelings that you have. And while you have to be that leader, I think showing some vulnerability and actually sharing that would be what I've seen is worked well. So.
Just to jump in on, since it's international context, I think your point that it can often be a question of whether you're going to have a meal on the table or not if you fail. It's a very different world than what we are used to in this part of the world. And there is this sense, especially in the Valley, and you have to be very careful what playbooks you walk away from here. So there's not every playbook, in my humble opinion, is applicable to every other place in the world. The idea that in the Valley we have this new culture now that workplace is not a family, it's an alliance. And it comes in at a time, and then people are disposable. I actually fundamentally disagree with that. I totally disagree with that, especially in a place where you are. No, we are a family. We make it very clear. Because when you're early and you are people who may have gone to college for the first time in their family, and instead of taking their multinational job, they came to work at Fresh Desk, and they need some assistance, they need some help, they need mentorship, they need exposure. And it is our responsibility as management leadership to make sure they see through that. So I think for many of us here, many of you who are entrepreneurs and are often taking inspiration from the Valley and the models here, you've got to be very careful. There is something about the cultural context that we operate in. We are at a very different level in terms of economic development in these communities, and you have to make sure people feel you've got their back, right? even when you're running out of funding round, you cut your salary first before you cut someone else's salary. You don't just fire people just because you couldn't do a Series B. It's a different world, and we'll have to be very, very careful and thoughtful about this. Good news is there are examples of companies being founded from around the world that have scaled, they've gone through that path. There are others, but you're absolutely right in sort of feeling that you got to give something more, and that is that I'm with you throughout, right? You were with me when could have gone to the company, have a nice little cushy job.
I wouldn't. Just one thing I want to add. I don't think that that's an international question. It's not an international question.
Unfortunately.
I can assure you that there are people in the city of Detroit that wonder where the next meal's going to come from.
Yeah. Agreed.
I dealt with it. I
Okay,
eat my partner's mother's food.
in the center here.
Wow.
Okay, we'll do this first.
My name is Svetlana Khudka. I am full-bred scholar here at Stanford University. I'm from Ukraine. And my question is about, well, you have failed, but then you have to go and find more money among investors. So how you restore this trust from investors? Because technically you are here because you have been successful in result. But when you are failed and you need more investments, what you are doing, how you deal with that? It's my first question. And second one, it's more about well, I will put it on the international level. Majority of us here are from so-called blamed or labeled as failed state societies, which have a lot of corruption problems, structural barriers, and everything. And quite often the advice, general advice which is given, guys, show us your stories of success. But technically also it's really very difficult. So what could be your recommendations? What might be the advices to reframe stories of these countries, of our countries from Asia, Latin America, from Eastern Europe, as Ukraine, for example, to get to the investment trust and success after set of failures? Yes, thank you.
Okay, Mike, go ahead.
So my first company, not my first startup, but the first company where I was the original founder, we didn't ever raise any institutional money or any outside money. We basically figured it out organically. We did customer financing. We would sell ahead of actually having the product and then deliver it later. But we've seen a lot of folks that have let investors down and then go back and manage to get investor confidence back again. It is a challenge, and it really depends on your relationship with those people and the idea and the resources you have to put behind it. And are you being honest with yourself? Are you being honest with them? Did you explain how you failed and what you learned from it? I think if the investor thinks that you're deluding yourself or you're not quite being honest with them, then they're going to trust you a lot less than if you're just pretty much straight up about it. And I've worked in Nigeria, I've worked in Eastern Europe, I've worked in a lot of places, South America, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, blah, 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 right? And it's really dealing with the various agencies or powers that be, or facing corruption situations. It's an interesting challenge. The U.S. has a sort of policy of not participating in that because you then promote it and you keep it going. And it's very, very subversive and corrosive to sponsor or participate in those kind of behaviors because it just gets worse. It keeps going. They're going to ask you again the next week. So I don't have a great answer for that, to be honest, other than I've never really participated in it, and it's generally a U.S. Policy to not do that.
And as we talked about the Silicon Valley state of mind this morning, I was at a conference in Silicon Valley with a number of entrepreneurs, and I walked in the door, and there was a guy who had just lost $10 billion for his company and was all over the press, and it was this huge failure. And I arrived at this conference and thought, I can't believe he was willing to show his face here. He's been all over the press. He just lost $10 billion. And he walks in the room, and it's a group of entrepreneurs, and he got up and he said, I bet many of you are really wondering why I'm here, and I just lost $10 billion. I'd like to tell you how I lost it and what I learned from it, and I'm starting a new venture capital fund to take my failure and turn it into a success. And the group around him were applauding, and he got his funding because he was willing to take it and just say, yeah, I lost $10 billion. Here are all the things I did wrong, and here's why I'm going to be so much smarter next. And here's how I'm going to help entrepreneurs. And I did think about, this is why Silicon Valley is special, because instead of people pushing him aside, they embraced that story as he showed that vulnerability, as Herb talked about. And it became a positive for him, which was shocking to me, but it signifies what Silicon Valley is about to me.
Right. So I agree with you, but I want to make sure that everybody doesn't think that we are up here thinking that that was okay.
Yes.
But the way you apply, because how many people here, business is doing less than $50,000? Anybody? A lot of you, right? So when you hear those numbers, it sounds just so like $10 billion. I'm mad at them. I didn't have no money in it, right? But to address the young lady's question about the credit cards, or to address and go a little more detail, because it's very hard for us up here to just go, failure is great, you can win. And to try to drill down deep on it, maybe I'll give you what I experienced. So whether it's your credit cards or whether it's something that you failed at, people do want to see you figure it out. The second time that I closed Fubu down was because I had $30,000 in credit card bills because I had opened up I tried to deliver on an order. I didn't know what I was doing with the manufacturing, I screwed it up. The next time the order came in when I opened it up again, I had a $50,000 order. My credit cards were maxed out, I didn't have any money. So what I decided to do is, I had a $50,000 order. I went over to the screen printer that charged me an average of $6.50 a shirt. I said, can you charge me $7.50 a shirt? And I'm going to have the store write you the check, and you then send the product directly to the store. Why was this good for the store? Well, if they would have gave me $50,000, I would have been gone. That's it. I would have been paid off the bills, and hopefully I'd figure it out. So they knew now they were trusting a manufacturer. The manufacturer was happy because they knew that the store would give them the money, and they also got an extra VIG. They got an extra $1 on the shirt from me. And I didn't have to give up not 1% of my company. But I had to figure it out, and the reason I figured it out was because I had those high credit card bills. And that would sharpen me for the next time that I would do a strategic relationship with somebody, and it would sharpen me for the rest of my life. But I would have never learned that lesson on how to become smarter and more agile if I didn't have that challenge. So business is going to teach you something one way or another. It's always about a number. And in any transaction in business, somebody makes money, no matter what. And you're going to have to figure it out. Now, we can't promise you all that you're going to win. We would be lying to you. But that challenge that you're going through is going to make you either figure it out or you're going to hopefully fail fast.
I'd like to add one thing, if I may, that I learned this in 1999. It was the sesquicentennial, which is the 150th anniversary of 1849, which is the gold rush. That's why we have the 49ers team here. In the gold rush, people would stake a claim. They'd go out to the middle of nowhere. They'd get a bunch of brand new technology, irrigation technology, mining technology, shovels, spades, drills, you name it. And then they would fail. And then they would go and do it again, and they would fail. And that's how the Silicon Valley culture, the culture of the people here has developed. And it's been over 160, 70 years. It's not something brand new. It's not something 50 years old when Silicon Valley was apple orchards. It's actually a lot older than that. And so there is a legacy here that's a little bit older than you would realize.
And I'll just add one thing to your question. Always remember your reputation. Your reputation is going to follow you wherever you go. And in my opinion, that's the most important thing you have, is integrity, honesty, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that's going to follow you. You can lose $10 billion, and that's horrible. But I would argue that guy, and I don't know who it is, that guy probably has a decent reputation at some level and has respect among his colleagues and is able to go out and raise another fund or do whatever he's going to do. It's his reputation that got him there.
Okay, next question. Oh, okay.
Hi, my name is Hadi. I'm originally from Senegal, but I do live now in Canada. and I would like to bring the conversation between entrepreneurship and mental health, in the sense that I've seen a lot of people who have failed, have been into a lot of deep depression. Some, unfortunately, they committed suicide, and other, they went into deep addictions. How, when you were in your really bad day, how did you recover from failure? Because I know now we're talking that you've lost millions of dollars, you lost businesses. We can recover from money, but mental health is harder to recover. So what are your advice to us here, to young entrepreneurs, to people like myself who doesn't have my family because I live in another country and I'm an immigrant too. So what would be your advice for us?
If I could take, Hadi, thanks for that question. I would say surround yourself with people both at work, as well as outside work, who are your true champions. It shouldn't get to a point where you're at a breaking point, because there'll be highs and lows. But at the end of the day, you have to remember, even if you're an entrepreneur, it is business. It is not life. And I think, I don't believe it has to be to the point where there's a nervous breakdown. So there are lows every day. There's probably every second hour. You should be able to have folks who are mentoring you, advising you, who can be a sounding board. And that's where I'll go back to what I said earlier. I actually do think it's healthy to have other interests. It's healthy to have a family that welcomes you when you go home. It's healthy to take time off. You have to. You should push yourself out, even if it's for a day or two. And it is crucial to have other areas in which you can impact. Many of us are change makers in a broader way. And you got to embrace that and do that. There's passions beyond just one area. So I think, that's just a broad reaction I have. And obviously, if someone has a condition that is a mental health condition, then there might be a need for a medical attention of a different kind. But it shouldn't get to a point where you are in a state of dysfunction, right? And that's why you got to create that environment. And by the way, let me also say this: as a leader, as an entrepreneur, you're also reflecting, you're also projecting that into your culture. You should not have a down phase. So you don't have people who are stressed out 24/7 at work, because it is an environment where people are coming and they should be looking forward to coming every day. So it's not just for your own self, but also for the team that you're leading, that it is a healthy place and where there is a balance, if not a work-life balance, but there is a balance of folks actually having a good time, and managing the stress in a proper manner.
Okay. Go ahead and I'll let you all select folks.
Time's up.
Thanks for this presentation today. Quick question. Some of us are in leadership positions and we lead teams and we always fall over. And then we try something new, we expect our troops to follow us, and then we fall over again. Any pieces of advice on how to keep the morale up, how to keep trust from your teams in the face of what is inevitable and consistent failure?
I think you let them see you fail, and it's okay. But there are also times where you might not let them see you fail. You talk about this B word, the balance word, right? I think there's a balance there for me anyway. But I have two of my team members in the room here, Sky Yeager, who leads our bicycle division, and Heidi Hayden that's back there at the defibrillator machine. There's a reason for that. I might fall over and fail any second. But let people see you fail. It's going to build them, I would argue, and they're going to learn from that. And they're going to make you better at the end of the day. I don't know. I let people see us fail.
Involve them in the fix. Get their input.
Yeah.
Involve them in, okay, what can we do better? How can we fix it? And then they'll join you.
I talked about vulnerability, but I have to say, I've worked in a lot of team environments, led a lot of teams, and one of the people that I was around, was one of the best kind of motivational team building people I've ever heard speak, and he's got a great book out, Patrick Lencioni, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and that's where I had some of that early learning around vulnerability. But then if you go through his pyramid of the 5 dysfunctions, and I would highly encourage any of you to read it, It actually goes through 5 pyramid and talks about trust and loyalty and everything and how you actually build that. And it's a process. I mean, you really have to work at it. So I actually used those principles. A couple years ago, I got asked to take on a new team, a global team, people from all over the place, and I actually brought in some people to actually help us execute on the Lencioni model because we just were not operating well. It was clear to me in the first 6 months. And now here we are 3 or 4 years later, and we're really humming as a team. But a lot of it, the basics, the foundation is a lot around vulnerability, which is really what I always come back to. So.
Okay.
Hi. Can you all share some of your daily rituals that has helped you succeed in your life?
Can you just say it again, please?
Daily rituals.
Daily rituals?
Yeah.
Who wants to go first on that one?
Yeah.
So
Daily ritual? Yours must be insane.
Damon has helped me. It's great. No, you know what? I'll go back to family first. We talked about that a little bit. So, my biggest mentor and somebody I've always used, and there was actually some article written about this just recently, like who do you really rely on? But my big sister is she's kind of my compass for me. I lost my parents earlier on in life, but she kind of stepped in, and she's always been my compass. And so, I've always relied on her. But I've had that family mentor, but I've always picked a business mentor as well, and I've used several throughout the course of my career. And I just picked different people. But I will say, if I ever really have to come back and try to make some serious decisions, I'd go back to the family first. So.
In terms of daily rituals, I mean, for me, I would say it would be you got to take some time to organize yourself. You have to. There's always a way to rank order your priorities. You cannot get everything done, in order to be super being. Secondly, I mean, personally, I actually am at best when I'm actually outside thinking, walking. We often even do walking meetings. And I've built into my routine to take 30 minutes out and just go out and clear your thinking. You have to. It is so crucial as a leader to have a clear decision making because you're responsible for, frankly, setting the direction, but also day-to-day tactically speaking, and you cannot create more work for people or lead them in the wrong direction, right? So it is crucial to take it very seriously. And I think probably as a leader, that's the single biggest thing you're doing is setting the direction on so many levels. So you got to have clear thinking, and for that, stepping back. And so I do that on a daily basis, get out a little bit, and then make sure that I'm planning.
Yeah, I practice goal setting. I learned it a long time ago when I first read Think and Grow Rich. So I have 10 goals that I read every single morning and every single night before I go to bed. I want them to be the first thing I think of when I wake up, the last thing to think of when I go to bed. 6 of them are goals that expire in 6 months. 2 of them are goals that expire in 5 years, and 2 of them are goals that expire in 20 years. And every 6 months I reset the goals, the 6-month goals.
Great. Okay.
I play a lot of squash, so I exercise a lot.
Squash.
I don't know if you know what that is. I have my priorities straight, so it's kind of funny in the car when my wife jams on the brake in the passenger seat, and I go, there's one person I care about most in this car, and it's me, and I'm not planning on killing me right now. So, that's a joke, by the way. I kind of have the priority list fairly clear, organizing scheduling time, like me time or wife time or kid time, whatever it is, so that nothing can mess with it. It's just sacred time. No one can take that time. I think that's a key thing. What else? I think just figuring out what you're going to do that day every morning early. I get up really early. That helps too.
You've heard 4 waitress. Let's get one more question.
Yes,
I think we
please.
got 5
I think
minutes.
one more. Yeah.
So one of the things that you're talking about is the fact that in the U.S. it's okay to fail, and in other countries that puts you a black mark on your forehead, and you're stigmatized for a long period of time, and you might not be able to move forward with your career. Yet I would argue a little bit that there's an aversion to failure in the U.S. And you look at the fact that kids, when they go compete, it doesn't matter in what place you come, you still get an award just for competing. And I think that comes actually out of the aversion of failing. So how do you get from that, where you have an educational system that is averse averted to having failure for the young kids to the point where young entrepreneurs are okay to fail?
I didn't get an award when I failed.
I didn't either.
I didn't. I don't really know about. So you're talking about like Meet the Parents when they have a ribbon for like 11th place awards?
Yeah.
I don't really see that.
Well, there's the trophy generation, right?
Yeah.
There is that trophy generation I think you're referring to.
And so that's
Feel bad for
currently,
those
that's
kids.
today.
Yeah, I feel bad for
That
those
sucks.
kids.
I know.
It does suck. Ain't no
Sorry.
trophy. Yeah.
I have 2 of them, and they're dealing with failure, so I don't think the trophies made a lot of difference.
Yeah.
In the back there.
Excuse me, I'm here.
Oh, okay,
My
I'm
name
so
is
sorry. Go
Mahina.
ahead.
I'm from Middle Asia, from Tajikistan. Far Tajikistan. We are neighbor with Afghanistan. For those who doesn't know that, I'm the food maker from food industry, and I have the question on your seed way. So when you were beginning your business, what was the hard challenge that faced you and caused the failure? And what was the exact inspiration that pushed you to overcome your problem, your hard problem on your way?
Go ahead.
What was it? What inspired the... I didn't quite get the question.
The question I think was that what were the failures at the early stage, and what inspired you to overcome those? If I heard you right.
Yes, I'm just asking that what was that great problem that you faced on your way, especially at the beginning, and how did you overcome it? So how did you solve your problem with exact ways? What did you do? And what was your exact problem that just caused maybe a failure, but you made your heart to overcome it?
That's a long answer that needs maybe a few days or a few weeks or a few months. For me, just the short answer for the first business where I lost millions of dollars on not $10 billion, but millions of dollars, I never got the business to scale. And it was because I wasn't applying money in the right places to garner subscriptions for the website. So that's the short answer, but there were countless mistakes that we were making in hindsight.
I can quickly jump in. Freshdesk, we are a cloud-based software company in a fairly competitive market space. It was launched out of India, as Laurie alluded to, in a fairly, I would say, there are large incumbents in the market. Today we have like the top 2 companies in that space. So early days, competing with folks who were right here in the biggest market, and we were positioning, launching the product from outside the biggest market wasn't easy. And I think for us it was just executing. I mean, just doing things better. I mean, and I think often it is about making sure that you are providing the world-class product, you're providing the world-class support, you have the team who understands the competition you're taking on, again, having a mission around it and mobilizing resources and just executing. I actually genuinely believe in most businesses you can succeed from wherever you are, but it's just being very, very operationally focused. I think often at times we can as entrepreneurs, things that operations cannot take a backseat. You have to roll up your sleeve and every single day making sure that you are executing. So whatever that challenge is, you can overcome if you have the right tactics. So for us, that was the case, and we've been fine now beating out the competition, in a host of times.
So for us, we grew 7 years in a row, 100% year on year with no outside capital, and it was. We had to figure out that in order to do that, we had to work on the business and in the business. And we read a book called The E-Myth, which was great. It said, okay, you've got to spend, maybe as much as half of your time, implementing systems and processes and analyzing all the results that you get to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And that was really helpful. And then the other one was just cash flow. And God, I took myself off payroll, my partner, our management team off payroll for a month here, a month there. Nobody left. But countless times we would, we would try not to discount, but we'd try and get payments up front from customers. We would try and squeeze our vendors, and just anything we could do to, and then we worked really long hours, because to grow at that rate organically is a lot of work. And so we kind of burned out a lot of people along the way. But we didn't lose people. We just got them pretty tired.
Okay, on that note, I'd love to thank my panelists and you as a great audience. And
Thank you, Larry.
thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
It's good seeing you.
You got my number.
Yeah.